Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. We are your hosts and hopefully your new bookish pals. I'm Hannah MacDonald.
And I'm Lydia Clare. Hello, bookends, and welcome to another episode in our debut Spotlight series, where we shine a light on the freshest authors and their work. Today, our spotlight shines on the soon-to-be cult classic, Shark Heart. For Lewis and Wren, their first year of marriage is also their last, when Lewis receives a rare diagnosis. He will retain most of his consciousness, memories, and intellect, but his physical body will gradually turn into a great white shark. We watch as Lewis and Wren both struggle with the consequences of the news, and as it brings back memories of Wren's mother, who Wren is still grieving the loss of. An emotional exploration of motherhood, marriage, transformation, and letting go. This unforgettable debut examines what it truly means to be human.
Emily Habeck is a writer from Ardmore, Oklahoma. She's an alumna of Southern Methodist University's Meadows School of the Arts, where she received a BFA in theatre. She also holds master's degrees from Vanderbilt Divinity School and Vanderbilt's Peabody College. Her debut novel, Shark Heart, is out on the 8th of August and is published by Joe Fletcher Books, an imprint of Quercus. After both devouring said book, we are thrilled to have Emily joining us today to chat about it. So Emily, welcome to A Pair of Bookends.
Thank you. I no one has called this a soon-to-be cult classic, and I got like a little goosebumps. That would be so cool. Thank you so much for having me.
It is 100% going to be a cult classic. Are you joking?
Yeah. It has fully cemented itself into my own heart.
Well, you guys are making it happen. I appreciate it.
Thank you. But before we get into the book, as much as I desperately want to, I do need to ask you a very important question, and that is, what are you currently reading?
Yes, I am currently reading and loving Maggie Smith's I think it's Make This Place Beautiful. And oh my gosh, personal writing like that really terrifies me. She does it with such elegance and clarity and self-knowledge and self-compassion that I just very much admire. And of course, she's like a poet through and through in it. Yeah, I feel like it's one of those books I'm going to have to reread as soon as I read it. And I was saving it for a while. You know, do you ever have those books where you're like, I need a reading treat and I know I'm going to love this. So I'm just going to like let it be there for me when I want to gobble it up. So that's where I'm at right now.
I love that reading treat. I know the ones.
I've been so guilty of that a number of times, of just being like, I can't, it's going to be too good. I can't do it now. I'm not ready.
Right. Yeah. I want to be like, you know, in a place where I can consume it. And maybe that's like just indicative of my personality, like delayed satisfaction. Like I need to live for today, like open the nice bottle of wine. The good quality for a novelist to be able to delay gratification.
Absolutely.
I would love to start, Emily, by finding a bit more out about you, because obviously you studied theatre and we both studied theatre.
So great.
I wanted to know how your journey into becoming a debut author happened. Like, how did you go from theatre to the literary world?
Yeah. Wow. The path has been like long and winding. Yeah. So probably like you, I grew up around theater and going to plays and reading plays and being in them. And I went to college for theater and was just in this incredible creative community. And after college, I moved out to Los Angeles to work in film and TV, which just kind of felt like it was a gut reaction. I was like, I want to experience this. I want to do this. I can apply all my skills that I picked up in theater in this new industry. And for the better part of the decade, I worked in that world at first as an actress, but then I realized I much preferred the writing side of things. And I had some jobs in film and TV story development. And so my mind was like very much in like script land when I got the idea for this book. And I'd never thought about writing a book. It always just seemed very big and very hard. Yeah. So I wrote this scene that came to me that ended up being this book. And it initially read like a short film, but kind of incomplete. Like I was like, there's more to this. I'm drawn to this. It's pulling me. And I tried to expand it as a script. And then I was like, this is still like not right. And then I just started writing prose. I found that it was really, really nice. And once I started, I couldn't stop. And in hindsight, I think that fiction is just a really good medium for my personality. Like I said earlier, I guess I'm okay with delayed gratification and a long-term project. I'm also an introvert and I'm in my imagination a lot. I think when I was acting, that was kind of like my weakness, as I was always in my head. But as a writer, that's a really good place to be. And so being able to kind of live out these worlds in my head and being able to express them through language and thought and feelings is like, just felt kind of a natural extension of like who I am and how I move through the world. So I didn't really expect that I would ever write a book, but I've always loved to read. And yeah, I really feel like it was just such a gift that I kind of trusted that and like took this leap of faith and explored it. And I think that's probably why it is an unconventional novel, because I was not like surrounded by the community of fiction writers. And there are a lot of really good ideas and strategies about how to write a book and get published in the traditional mainstream sense, but I just wasn't surrounded by that. And so I think I really had this freedom that allowed me to just kind of take this where I needed to go with it. And also in film, like it takes millions and millions and millions of dollars and lots of yeses and a ton of time to get something fully made in its like complete iteration. But with a book, it's like a lot less complicated to at least to get it to the place of like finished. Like it is what it is. It has all its parts and it's created, And I think after working in that industry with this huge machine around storytelling, it was nice to just be small and simple. And so it was a really good experience. And
would you ever
long-winded answer?
No, I find it so
we love
interesting. Do you just purely see this story as a novel, or now that you've written the novel and you've got the story to a place where you wanted it to be, you said at first you were toying with it being a script, would you ever expand it into, would you ever have it adapted now, or do you just want it to purely stay as a novel?
Oh, I would love to see it. I would love to see it on screen or on the stage. I would need like a really great partner in terms of a filmmaker, but I would love to adapt it. And I think that the two roles of Lewis and Ren would be like roles of a lifetime for people to be able to go on that journey to a man becoming a shark and then the immense like grief that Ren faces. Those would just be such juicy roles. And I would just love to see them played out in real life, real life,
I think I can speak for both me and Lydia that would be like our dream role would be Ren.
Just don't forget us.
Oh God. Oh, yeah,
well, the writer's strike has to end first and the actor's strike.
Absolutely.
So I stand with the unions, but when all this is cleared up, it would be really, really fun. But I'm satisfied too. Like I feel really complete and like I told the story I wanted to tell. So anything after this is just, icing on the cake, as they say.
Yeah. Like my question was not to say that this isn't, I realized as I was saying the question that it probably sounded like I was saying, this isn't.
Oh no,
good
I
enough
totally
as a story
got
as it
you.
is. Like this is such
Yes.
a wonderful story. And I'm so like glad that you wrote it as a novel because I just felt so immersed in this book. And I've literally spent like the last few days and nights just completely devouring it. So I am so grateful it is in book form.
Oh, I totally heard the question in the way you intended.
Yeah, good.
I mean, I think you have created such a unique and thought-provoking novel. I mean, I've not read anything like this before, ever. Nothing like this. And I read a lot of books. But there's something about this book that resonates with you and it kind of moved me beyond a way that I can describe. It was a very emotional novel. And I'd like to go a bit more into detail about the concept and development of the story because it is such a unique story and a unique idea. First of all, how the heck did you come up with this? And then how the heck did you execute it so well?
Well, thank you for thank you for that. I'm glad I executed it well. I think it was like a confluence of things. I don't think it was one don't think it was like one like lightning bolt moment outside of that short film, script like scene thing that eventually became the seed for the rest of the book. But I was, like I said, I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I grew up in Oklahoma, which is, landlocked and just a lot of grass. And it was the first time I lived near the ocean. And so there was just this like novelty of like being near the water and just the vastness of that. And I think as someone who's in my imagination a lot, and as a kid, I had like, magical worlds, and maybe I do now, maybe that's what writing is, but just thinking about how there's this like entire like ecosystem with its like, unvoiced laws, just like right next to us, like all the time. And just thinking about the mysteries of the ocean and the creatures that we don't even know about, and what it could reveal about the history of our planet, and just like, just that kind of hiding in plain sight feeling that the ocean is. And so I think I was thinking a lot about like what it would be like to not be a visitor to that place, but to experience it wholly. And as like, this is my home. And so I think creating a creature with human consciousness, but physical adaptability to be able to explore this place that is like very fascinating to me. That was part of it. Just kind of like that, what do you call it? Thought experiment. Yes, that's what it was. And at the same time, I think, and I didn't realize this until much later, but I think writing a character who is experiencing this really traumatic, like outward transformation had a lot to do with what I was dealing with inwardly in that time of my life. Kind of inexplicably, I was just in this crisis of meaning, and I was really questioning everything that I thought I knew for sure in this existential way. And people joke about an existential crisis all the time, but I really was experiencing one and feeling kind of unmoored and just completely strange in the world. Be like walking past people getting their nails done, and I'm like, how are you just doing this right now? Like, we don't know what any of this means. Reality is a construct. And I think it was actually a really important conversation I was having with myself, because I was asking questions about like the purpose of art and work and kind of my place in it. And really like, what is love? And like, what do I want to do with my life? And so through the course of this, internal process and working on this book, I ended up moving across the country to go to divinity school and work on another master's degree in community development. And I think in that time, I was kind of looking to like the great spiritual traditions to sort of make sense of what I was feeling. And also I in that period in grad school, I was like also working on the book, not every day or even every month, but it was with me like as a companion all the time. I would like go into it when I had time. And it just felt like it was just kind of always there, like a place to kind of like live and be with these characters who were experiencing what I was. But yeah, I think that experience in grad school was really, really important, because I realized that all the questions and things that I was thinking about were like, it's like nothing new to humanity. Like everyone has had these questions like through the ages, and like the great texts have been written, and I can be a part of that ancestry just by reading them. And I don't think that I like have any answers, but I think I have made peace with the mystery, and just knowing that I will never know, and that is just actually like the state of being human, is we don't have that omniscience, and just to accept that I'll never get there in this body in this lifetime. Like that's for, whatever's next, if there is something next. But I think living in this book was definitely a big part of that whole transformation. And I really hope that like people read this, and maybe if they're feeling a bit foreign to themselves or alone in the world or displaced, that they can find comfort in it, like as I did writing it.
Absolutely. And it is a truly comforting, but as traumatic and difficult as parts of it are, and believe you me, there are there are parts that you're like, your heart is in your mouth, but there is a great comfort from the realizing that no character in it, and I think this is true to real life and everybody, that no one kind of knows what they're doing. No one does, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. None of us know. We all pretend, and it's just sometimes it is lovely to live in someone's head when they are so honest about kind of not having a clue about stuff. It's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've definitely gotten that comfort from books. And I think that, as far as a medium, like in film, like we can see a character's eyes and we can kind of like, okay, I feel what they're feeling. But in a book, we can like go in their head and I don't think there's like any other experience in life that's like that revealing, in terms of like art and, experiencing what someone else is thinking.
Absolutely.
I just want to expand on Lydia's question ever so slightly, because I was curious about your choice. Obviously, the animal mutation narrative that runs through the book. And when it first happens and Lewis receives the diagnosis, I was thinking like, oh, like this is a new thing. Like this is like a totally foreign concept. But then like the way the doctors were speaking about it as the scene kind of went on, I was like, oh, like they're acting like this is totally normal. Like this isn't out of the ordinary. This is something that other people are going through. So where did the choice come from to like, in this world, this sort of thing is already happening, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Well, I think it's two things. Like one, as an author, like it just didn't seem interesting to me to get into that. Like I think I write from an emotional place first, and kind of getting into like that part of the world building just didn't feel exciting. Like I was more curious about the character's journey than the origin of this disease. And then on a second level, I think there are also just so many like heartbreaking absurdities we just have to accept in order to make meaning in our lives. Like things like from like gun violence to climate stuff to racism to the way society treats people who struggle with addiction and mental illness. So I'm like, what's so weird about man just turning into a shark randomly in the context of all that's ridiculously infuriating and broken about this world? And so I think for me, I was like probably a byproduct of that like existential place of like pulling back and being like, how are we all just okay with this? How is this just fine? And so, and I think that is like part of the utility of the absurd, is that it points out what is most real and kind of can like show a mirror back to culture and society about what it is.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think as well with the, like, if you only have to make one leap of faith with this book, it is just to say, okay, so this guy can turn into a shark. And that is it. That's the only
truly.
bit
if you can get there.
Yeah. If you can just suspend your disbelief for that second, that you will be absolutely fine.
Totally. And I think it's just like, again, like, it's like, why do we have to ask why? Like some things we'll just never know. And I think like a lot of that like ties into the theme of loss in this book. And like the reality of being a person is that if it goes well, we will lose people that we love in our lives. And like that to me is like, just like, why does it have to be that way? Why can't we just like continue on in young bodies forever? But that's just not what the human syllabus is about. And so again, it's just like accepting the things that are just reality. And yeah, I mean, I know these are like basic things to grapple with on a conceptual level, but at the time I was like really in it.
The human experience is just so sad.
It is. It can be, but then also I think what makes, because it's so temporary and because the moments with each other are so fleeting, like that's also what makes them so special. Like if we were immortal and nothing ever changed, I think I would be pretty bored.
I've just remembered a part in a quote from the book, and I think it's perfect for this moment. And I make notes before I interview people. I make notes on my phone whilst I'm reading their book, and I literally just put in capital letters, "It was brief but significant."
Yeah.
In capital letters. And I feel like that is like the perfect sort of description for life itself.
Yeah.
Even though in the book
so
it wasn't
cool.
being used to describe that way, I think it just fits perfectly. So
yeah, brief but significant. Oh, it's so interesting. I hadn't pulled it out of context in the whole book that way, but yeah, thank you. That was like, that's really cool to hear it in that way.
Beautiful. So Lydia obviously already said how unique your book is. And I really wanted to get into talking about the style, because I think that is also so unique, and it is part of what makes the book so compelling, is that it's told in this vignette style. And it unfortunately means that you want to read it in one sitting, which also means that the book is over quickly. But it makes it so digestible and so exciting to read. Where did this style come from? Like, what draws you to writing in this way? And I'd love to know where your inspiration comes comes from.
Yeah. In terms of the style, this is going to sound really woo-woo, but it just is what the intuition of the story was. Also, like as a reader, I love to turn pages and I really like to feel smart. I love to be like, and if there's just something like so great, not every book, but every now and then, I just need to fly through a book, it's like, sprint so that, you can crawl one day. And I think I just was writing the book that I wanted to read. But also, I think it was also a byproduct of what my life was at that time. I was working, going to school. And some days, like all I had in me was like a couple of paragraphs. And I was like, I did my writing for the day, good job, Emily. And I think I'm also, and through this, and writing in this way, like this is my first book, I think I realized that the writing for a page count or a word count as a goal, this feels like kind of stressful to me. I think I'm better off thinking about like, okay, today's goal is I want to get the characters from like point A to B, and I can get there in whatever way I want to get there, but as long as the action is complete, maybe that is a better way of working for me than kind of the external benchmarks. And again, though, like I was not surrounded by authors and writing teachers who were saying like, oh, literary fiction needs to be 80,000 to 100,000 words to, even like, get across an agent's desk kind of thing. I just like didn't know that stuff. And so I think I was just breaking rules because I just didn't have them. And I don't know, I have a friend who jokes like there are no rules, like, and I think in art, maybe he's right. I think it's the honesty that people kind of track, and maybe the rules do exist for a reason to kind of help keep things organized, but I feel like art is a way that adults can play. And I felt like I was able to in this way. But the scenes in particular, like I said, I was writing in script form a lot of my life. And a lot of those original scenes like were written as prose, but the prose was just so lean. Like it was just like he said, she said, and the dialogue. And I was like, this just reads like a script. So what if I just like, cut out the quotes and the descriptors and just like had the text? And I realized that in the moments when I had the instinct to do that, there were these times of derealization for the characters where they are like untethered from themselves and watching themselves from above. And I had that clarity during the pandemic a lot too. Like when things were just so bizarre, I'd be like, is this really happening? Where I just all of a sudden, I feel like I'm just like watching myself, like it just feels like so surreal and out of body. And I think that's something that happens to people when things are overwhelming. And so the scenes, I think, are moments in the characters' journeys where that's happening for at least one of them.
Absolutely. And I think that you were talking about rules and breaking rules. And I truly, truly believe that nothing interesting has ever been made by following the rules. Because I genuinely think that to be creative, and this is, I'm an actor, so it's obviously I have certain opinions about things, but to have the freedom to break rules and express yourself and do it without restriction, because you can always pare it back and put it into some kind of format, but to truly get something unique and interesting, I do think that you have to be able to have that freedom and use it.
Oh, totally. And I'm such a rule follower. It's kind of a miracle that this happened because, it happened because I didn't know the rules. and then I was like so deeply invested that I would like hear something and I'd be like, oh no, okay, I can't listen to that. I'm already like really far down. And then, like, when I was like sharing it and initially with agents and editors, like I heard all kinds of comments, and the whole time writing this, I never thought the premise was strange, which I don't know what that says about me. I was just like, yeah, this is like a completely normal book, possibly that's just because I believed it so much and I was just in the character's emotional world. So when people were like, shocked or bewildered by it, I was similarly bewildered because I just hadn't considered that it was weird. And I heard all kinds of things, like, I don't know where this sits on the shelf. And, is it speculative fiction? Is it magical realism? Is it science fiction, fantasy? And I think it's all those things. And my editor has assured me from the beginning that booksellers and readers will decide what it is. And I should just not worry about it. And so I've just taken her advice and let people call it what they want. And I think it's really exciting to see like where it's been embraced, especially like in the science fiction and fantasy realm. Like I don't often read those genres actually. And now I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. Like I really wonder what it would be like to kind of do a deep dive into those genres and see how those readers might be seeing it. And I don't know, do you do spoilers on this? I guess it's kind of a spoiler.
If you want to do a spoiler.
It's a tiny, there is a dragon in this book. So
oh, that's true. That's not a spoiler.
That's not a spoiler. So it does work.
It does. Well, I am a bookseller, and let me tell you, it will be pride of place on the bookshelf. Wherever we choose to put it, it will be
thank you.
Straight in people's eye lines. I really wanted to talk about how an integral part of this book is the idea of transformation. We've touched on it a little bit already. Mm-hmm. And there are the obvious transformations of characters, in particular Lewis turning into a great white shark. But it is also a coming of age story and acceptance of one's own weaknesses and changing aspects of personality and life expectations. Why is this a subject featured throughout?
I have not experienced any of the devastating losses that my characters have. I've not lost a parent or a partner, not become a shark, in any like internally I felt very weird.
Really?
But luckily it's not a memoir. But I do think I've always had a really hard time with change. And I think I'm really sensitive to that. And I think we don't really talk about, at least in the culture, and maybe in close to therapy rooms, but in the mainstream culture, we just don't really acknowledge the micro deaths within a lifetime, the things that are shifting imperceptibly in our experiences that make us just feel a little different in the world. And I think I've always had that. And it's always just been this kind of like, I'm like, am I the only one that just feels a little melancholy when the seasons change? And I'm in this season of life too, where I'm like going to a lot of my friends' weddings and they're having kids and achieving career milestones. And all of that is so great and wonderful. And I'm happy for them. And I also feel this palpable grief because I sense that the person that they were is like no longer here, and this new version is wonderful, and yet I don't know them yet. And so I feel like just all the transformation that the characters go through is probably just my own wrestling with what it means to be evolving as a person and in our own seasons of life too. Yeah, nothing is ever still, is it? It just keeps going.
I think you've articulated that so well, because I also feel like that at this period in my life where everybody's getting married and having children, and I'm just here.
Trying
to figure my life out.
Yeah, totally. I have to make changes really slowly. I mean, sometimes life makes the change for you. I feel like, you can't help that when something is like just what it is suddenly. But yeah, I'm definitely a late bloomer, baby steps. Yeah.
While we're on the subject of transformation, I wanted to talk a little bit more about how theatre makes its way into your novel. And when I was reading your book, I try really hard, if I can, and if I don't already know the author, to not read too much about the author beforehand, because I want to sort of read the novel and then afterwards it's sort of like really satisfactory being like, oh, so like that's why they did this and that's why they did that. And I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. But I didn't know that you had come from the world of theatre, but it absolutely shined through when I was reading it, because the references were so specific and so brilliant that I knew that you had to be somebody that had experienced that world. And as Lydia has said, the book explores transformation, but I also think, there's, as you said, loss wrapped up in those transformations. And I particularly find that interesting with creatives in the sense of identity and transformation and the loss of that when things don't quite work out, or when I guess like their art doesn't love them back. And we see that with Lewis, and he has to step away from being an actor to become a teacher, and it's almost, for the sake of his own sanity. And I've seen that with so many creatives. And I wanted to know why that storyline was important for you to include, and why you wanted to sort of merge those two worlds that you're from into this novel.
Well, I love the theater, and I have such a deep respect for theater artists, and particularly my friends who are, actors and have been in it for a long time now. And I just see the dedication it takes to keep showing up. And it's unlike writing in that, and it's a lot like film in that you need all the parts to completely do the thing. Of course, you could do a monologue or a one person show, but I think actors are just like so delightfully relational, and they feed off the energy of each other and an audience. And yeah, I think I understand that journey because I've walked part of the path myself, but also I've just seen my friends who are still in it. And I personally just didn't love the craft enough to kind of persevere through that. And I realized it very quickly because it just wasn't giving me joy. And I think I have some friends who are just so inspirational in the way they approach like almost the gift of the hustle of the privilege of being able to audition or take a class and defining success in ways that are empowering and creating their own work. And I think Lewis, he is somebody who tries to say, this is not my call anymore. This is not who I am, but he cannot. It is a part of him. And I think I did that to illustrate that it's like, for those people, especially I'm thinking of, my friend group who are actors, it is who they are. And no matter what they do, it will be them. And they don't need, a director, a casting director to say that that's who they are. It's just a part of them. And I think when I was in divinity school, I also recognized that sense of call in people who are really called to serve the world using their gifts and skills. And I think actors are the same way. There's definitely just this sense of like, I have to keep going through this. This is just what I'm called to do. And I feel that way with writing too. And I think that's why I was just able to write that part, like, with my own heart as well.
It was written so beautifully, and it really moved me. And I loved his sort of tug of war with that part of himself. And I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but there's a moment when he sends an email and it was so good.
The email I have always wanted to send.
Literally.
Oh gosh, yeah. I've never sent an email like that to someone, so it's really nice to write it.
Quite cathartic.
Yeah,
right. Oh my gosh. Someone like just messes up your vision. Anyway, spoiler. I'll stop.
It's worth reading the book just for the email. So moving on to another part. I mean, I say like another part of the book I loved. It's basically all of it. Was the marriage of Lewis and Ren, which is truly one of the most beautiful and realistic depictions of a marriage I've read in recent times. There is so much to their love. It's full of sacrifice, compromise, selfishness, tolerance. And I have a quote that I feel really encapsulates kind of how their marriage made me feel. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read your book back to you.
Yeah. It'd be an honor to hear an actor read my words. This is exciting. I'm just going to be really pleased.
So this is Ren talking about Lewis and the effect that he's had on her. Lewis was a magician, performing trick after marvelous trick, misdirecting her attention with jokes, stories, and games. As Ren fell for the distractions, Lewis tattooed her with beautiful poetry in a place she would never see, but somehow read every second. It's just too good. It's just too good. And honestly, if bookends listening, if you like that quote, you're going to love all of the book because it's all as beautiful as that. But their relationship is just, it's breathtaking and not perfect in any respects, but just so realistic. What did you want the reader to see in their relationship and why?
Yeah, well, first of all, beautiful reading.
Thank you.
And second, I feel like I also want to talk about the title in this. And I think, let me see if I can present this in a clear way. Okay, so there's actually two shark hearts in the novel. Lewis like literally has a shark heart. And interestingly, like if you Google shark heart, this is like an asterisk, like this is not related to my question, you will find the literal pictures of meat. So just, and So it's pretty interesting. It's like my cover of my book and then like the literal shark heart. So that's like what Lewis has. And then I actually think the title is more salient to Ren. When we think of the word shark in the culture, it's like has this aggressive connotation. You know, we have like loan sharks and West Side Story. There's the sharks and the jets and Jaws. And it's like this apex predator who's just like relentless. That's not true of that real animal, as I learned in my research. But I feel like Ren is like, despite all that she's been through and all the heartbreak, she is still like a shark for love. Like she is still like going to open her heart, even though she's been heartbroken before. And that's a very like metaphorical thing to say about Ren, who is so practical. And then to say that Lewis literally has a shark heart, that's like very literal. And that's not who he is. And so like to me, like Ren and Lewis like represent, or they map onto this contradiction in my personality where I'm like, on one end, I'm like, how do I see reality as it is? Like, this is the world. And then on the other side, I ask like, how do I resist cynicism and still experience awe and beauty, even though sometimes it seems like, you know, things are pretty terrible. And so I think Lewis and Ren have both of those questions. Like for Lewis, he's the one who resists cynicism and Ren sees the world as it is. But like throughout the course of the book, like they start to kind of enmesh, like not in an unhealthy way, but they take a little bit from each other, and Ren gets a little bit more playful and playful, not in a frivolous way, but just in an open way, and open to new experiences way. And Lewis becomes a little more grounded. And so I think in that line where, you know, tattooing poetry on her heart, like that is like the gift that he gives her, is like this ability to like wonder in reality, even though it's really hard sometimes. And I think also that's what I wish for in myself. Like sometimes I'm like, why can't I be, you know, both like remember all the things I need to do for my car and at the same time, like, you know, just play, you know, I feel like that's like this, maybe all adults feel this way. It's like you have this tension of opposites all the time, of wanting to experience delight, but also having to get business done. So yeah, I think they're both a part of me for sure.
I love them so much. And there were so many quotes in the book that I was just like, oh, like just moved me so much. And I was speaking to Lydia before, and like I'm not really much of a crier when it comes to reading, and it really annoys me because like sometimes that release would probably be amazing to be able to cry whilst reading, but for me it's a sign of a book meaning a lot to me if I get like a lump in my throat and I feel on the verge of tears. Like that's as far as it's going to go for me, really. And with this, there were just so many moments where I felt on the verge of tears, because it wasn't even just something being sad, it was just something being explored in such a beautiful way, and just their whole dynamic was just so special. And I'm really reluctant to say this because I don't want to give spoilers, but the moment when he gets his diagnosis, her reaction when she says, they say the first year of marriage is the hardest, and it was just like it broke my heart. I was like, no. Because she didn't have this whole like dramatic reaction and being like, oh, everything's ruined, everything's spoiled, like why? You know, it was just this like immediate, she knew that she was going to do whatever she could to make it work. Like their love could survive this, and that was her instant reaction. Like there was no doubt in her mind that she would try and make this work, and I just found that so moving.
Oh, thank you. She's definitely not someone who'd be like, it's gonna be fine, like we'll work it out. Like that's so nice to hear. Like it's so interesting. I mean, I think I write like an actor, like I put myself in the emotional place that they're in. And so when people tell me they cried reading it, I'm like, oh, good, because I'm not alone. I cried writing. And like some of these scenes where I'm like, when I was like, you know, editing them again and again, even just for like, you know, small things, I was like, oh my gosh, the emotional labor of like living these times with these people. I like one day I came downstairs and told my partner, I was like, I have to write a funny book next time. And I honestly don't know if I don't know. if that's possible, because I just love how works that are labeled as sad are honestly like the most truthful in life. And I think I'm really attracted to that authenticity. And I think sometimes people don't like sad books because it's uncomfortable to feel things, or it brings up, things we'd rather not look at in reality or in ourselves. But I love a sad album and, melancholy poetry. I think there's just something to that kind of exquisite sadness that it just really draws me in.
I don't think though that I would totally box this book off as a sad book. Like, I feel like that would kind of not fully do it justice. I think there's so many different ways you could describe this book. Like it has some incredibly funny moments, but it is also, it is sad and it is moving, but it's also very life affirming, and it forces you to think about the big questions of life. And there is so much more to it. So I don't want listeners to just be like, oh, this is just a sad book. Like, there is so much to this book.
It's not, no, definitely. It's definitely not all sad. But yeah, I definitely went on the whole range of experiences with them. And then there were parts of it, like the third section was just like, for some reason, like it was just so easy to write. And there's this like quirky character towards the end who was just like fell out of me. I was like, she must be like some part of my inner child or something. But I definitely went on all the range of emotions and feelings with these characters. And I don't know, like, I feel like when you're reading a script as actors, do you feel, do you take yourself into the emotional imagination? Like, what's your process when you're working on something?
I mean, yeah, completely. I hate when people ask me that question.
I'm sorry, now I'm interviewing you, but I'm curious.
It's different for every role.
I will not be able to answer this question.
No, because it's different for every role. And yeah, I really don't know how to articulate what my process is like.
I think with me, it's very clear for me that I can get emotionally invested in things very quickly. Hannah knows this. So like whenever I receive a script or a piece of something to read, like within seconds, and this is the same with books, but within seconds, I'm like already feeling everything that person feels.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I have to do is bring that back and then start to kind of a bit like your writing style of kind of like not following the rules and then trying to put the rules in place afterwards. That's kind of I work really emotionally led, and then I kind of go, okay, but actually I physically can't like be burst into tears here, even though I want to, because something else is making me do something different, or a director has told me to do something different. But yeah, it's definitely emotionally led.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like, I feel like I work the same way.
I feel like I have to dissect my scripts. Like, I am not always emotionally led. So
You're a Ren and I'm a Lewis.
No, but
That's right.
I have to, I read the script through, and then I look at it, everything that the character has said about themselves. And then I look at what everything the other characters say about that character. And then I look at, all the different experiences that make up this person and the kind of the dynamics that they have with other people in the script. And so I do really have to like pull it apart. And I also I have to strike off every stage direction when I go into a script, because if the writer's told me I have to sob at a certain point, then I will just never be able to get to that point.
Oh my God. That used to give me so much anxiety. Like when it's like
it's
sobbing.
The worst.
And as an emotionally led actor, I completely ignore stage directions. They just do not exist in my vocabulary.
Yeah. I feel like you sound like you're an investigator, like when you go in and look and read a script. And as a reader, I really love when the author is not really telling me how to feel or sparingly what the characters are outwardly doing. And I hadn't really connected that until you said that. But I really appreciate it when it's just like, oh, I know what they're feeling because I'm in their head, or I'm projecting my own feelings onto what they're feeling. But yeah, I don't always love just a ton of like, so-and-so stomped his foot or,
Yeah.
I think I'm definitely an investigator, and I think I am when I read books as well. Like I get so much satisfaction out of connecting the dots. So like something will happen, I'll be like, that's why she did this about 20 pages ago. That's it. That's the thing that caused that. That's the thing that triggered that.
And I don't think about it at all. I'm just like crying.
But Lydia loves not knowing stuff, and I'm like so nosy and need to know everything.
You can't cope. Hannah cannot cope with a unresolved ending. Like they are kryptonite. Whereas I'm like, give it to me.
Yeah,
don't give me the answers.
I'm a wobbler like you, Lydia. Totally. I don't need to know. I like if I went on an emotional journey with the characters, like I'm satisfied. Like what happened in the outward world doesn't matter as much. The ending changed a lot in Sharkheart for sure. Before I started working with my editor, there were a lot of pieces that were less concrete. And the original title was actually Above and Below the Surface of the Ocean, which I know now why Sharkheart is a better title. It's punchier, easier to remember, say all those things. It rhymes, which is great. There are emojis that match it, which is, kind of fun sometimes. But I realized that old title kind of was, it fits with what you're talking about, Lydia. I was really interested in the below the surface of the ocean, like the psychology. And my editor was like, okay, well, we need to like firm up the dates and the passage of time and the year so that so that readers like Hannah feel like safe and validated that, okay, I know where I am in the story. And so, I think I became a better writer in the editorial process in terms of the concrete, because as a reader, like I'm so much like into the feeling emotional place where I'm like, oh, dates, times, what
are they?
When did anything happen? So I think that was, and I think in working with my editor in that way, I learned what other readers are like. And so I think those were some of the rules that I added back in. And, I think in like one of the earlier drafts, I didn't have any marking of time in terms of months. And it really helped me too, as the author, kind of organize my thoughts around the actual concrete details of his transformation and like what was happening physically, and getting really precise about those details. And I think you said this earlier about like, how did I create the tactile experience of his transformation? I didn't fully answer it, but like in being an emotional writer, like I did all of the research to the end, and I kind of knew what I needed to know at that point. Cause I was like, okay, so what would this be feeling like? I have no idea. Let me find out. And I talked to this great, well-known like marine biologist, Greg Scommel. I'm like surprised he answered my email, and he was so generous, and I was a little intimidated, but he just went on the journey with me, like even like imagining scenarios. And the only thing that you really can't find out from the internet or books is like what it really feels like to be like close to one of these animals. And with his research, like he could tell me what things felt like, what they smelled like. And that was just invaluable. And a lot of those like direct details are in the book.
I love that. That is so fascinating. I'm always interested in what people's research processes are like. And it's so cool that he responded to you and helped you with creating the book. And thank God he did.
Oh yeah, it was really great. Like, I couldn't be more thankful. And he actually has a book out that just came out, I think in July, about his life working with great white sharks, kind of like a memoir. I'm just a few pages into it, but I'm excited to read the rest. Yeah, it's called Chasing Shadows.
I will include a link to that in the show notes as well as your book. Now, I've just realized the time, but I really want to squeeze in this question. So I wanted to ask about motherhood and how complex and nuanced that experience is. I say that not being a mother myself, but I thought the way that you explored it and wrote it was really beautiful. And we see Wren's tug of war with the idea of motherhood, which I think is especially moving during Lewis's diagnosis and when his mutation starts to occur. And there's a particular moment that I just thought was beautiful and really like heartbreaking. And it's when, she turns to him and she says, oh, what do you think about us having children? And he's like, now, like, really? And she's like, no, I just wanted to see what it would feel like to ask. And it literally, you burst through the book and tore my heart clean out my chest. It was, I couldn't take that moment. It was so emotional. And we also, we see her kind of tug of war with herself, but then we also reflect back on her own mother, Angela, and her experience of becoming a mother at 15. And we also see Angela's mother, Colleen, and her struggles too. We see a glimpse of that. Why did you want to sort of have this intergenerational perspective on motherhood?
Yeah, I don't think it was something I like consciously decided, but I love writing women. I understand women. I have a great relationship with my mom and wonderful girlfriends. Yeah, my friendships are like few but really deep, and I feel like I've known them through many stages of life. And I think listening to their stories and kind of growing together is what inspired that on one level. And then recently someone asked me about intergenerational trauma. Like, was I thinking about that? And I think I am now in hindsight, like aware that is what the characters experience. But I think no matter what you call it, like we all have stuff that doesn't belong to us, like traits that we have that we may be unaware of, that is because of something that happened to our great grandmother, and it was passed down and it became this characteristic through this game of telephone. And now we're like conscientious for some reason. And I think, some of it's nature and some of it's nurture, but I think we're also given great qualities too. I think families, we hear a lot about the trauma, but I think there is also overlooked the good qualities that we inherit from the people in our families. And although like Ren definitely has her share of intergenerational trauma, I think she also has a tremendous amount of courage and just in her, like I said, her shark heart, like her ability to like continue to pursue love, even though she's been heartbroken before. She's certainly braver than I am. And I think maybe she's someone I want to be more like. I don't know, write your heroes.
Yeah,
she's a
absolutely.
wonderful character.
She's such an inspiration. She really is. Just her strength is so admirable. Finally, just before we let you go, I'd like to ask you about letting go, really. This novel is as much about life as it is about the death of things. We see all the characters eventually losing something of themselves, and it's a fantastic examination of how we as emotional beings learn to live and grow with loss. I really hope that readers understand the joy that can come from that process of growing with the loss. What did you want the readers to take away from this book?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I think readers will take away what they're supposed to take away. But if I could like impart an intention or hope or something, it would be that it's the kind of book that makes people feel less alone, less foreign to themselves, less like what they're experiencing has never happened to anyone before. I think stories can do that. I think that's like the power of storytelling, at least in my life, is to be able to read something and feel like, well, at the very least, like this author's imagination understands like what I am experiencing. And then at a certain point, like I hope that readers take this story, and it becomes a source of joy, like just like it does for Ren in the story. I think, like you said, there's an opportunity for like lightness and renewal when we have transformation and loss.
Try not to get emotional.
Yeah.
That's just me.
No, it is such a beautiful book, and I would love for our listeners to immediately go and order themselves a copy, and I will of course be putting a link in the show notes. Very finally, before we let you go, but we need to squeeze some recommendations out of you.
Yeah,
so
no,
is there
I have
anything
no
you've done
time
enjoying?
constraints. All good. Well, I talked about You Can Make This Place Beautiful by Maggie Smith. I'm really enjoying that. And of course, the Chasing Shadows by Greg Scommel. I read a really exciting and strange, but like good strange story collection. It's called Out There by Kate Folk. She just has such an incredible mind. She writes about like dating and the technology age, but with just such this like wry voice. I really enjoyed it. I've been recommending it like constantly for a while now. And I know I'm like 15 years behind But I'm watching The Sopranos for the first time, and it is like really good. Like, no surprise. Everyone's been telling me you need to watch The Sopranos, but now I'm like, oh, I understand this canon of American television in this whole new way. And I find that when I'm watching good television, I write a little better. So yeah, so that's what I'm into. And otherwise, just talking to people about this book, it kind of, I'm always curious to hear what other people are listening and reading. Anything I should put on my radar?
I would say The Bear. Get The Bear on your radar. Have you watched The Bear?
I've watched the first season.
Love it so much.
Yeah.
I'm watching the second season at the moment, and I love it. So good.
I'll put it in line after The Sopranos.
I haven't watched The Sopranos either, so
What?
Yeah, you knew this. You already knew this.
I know.
You've already told me off about this.
I just wanted to be dramatic, add some tension into the situation.
People that listen to this podcast are used to you telling me off for the things that I haven't read or watched.
It's true.
But Emily, it has been so wonderful getting to chat to you about this book because, as I said before, we both absolutely devoured it and we both really fell in love with this book and cannot recommend it enough. It is gorgeous. The cover is amazing, but the content is even more beautiful. And yeah, I'm just completely in awe of your talent. And it's been so great getting to pick your brain about it. So thank you so much for coming on to A Pair of Bookends.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Where can our listeners find you on social media?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram these days at emily.habeck.
Amazing.
And I have a website with like upcoming events and things like that related to Sharkheart, emilyhabeck.com. And that's it.
Amazing. I will link all of that in the show notes. So listeners, please go and buy Sharkheart and please go give Emily a follow and share how much you're loving the book because I know you all will. If you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on Twitter and TikTok. Lydia, what is our threads at? Because we are so very cool and
it is at A Pair of Bookends. Surprisingly, could you believe it?
So shocked. But Emily, thank you so much again once more, and listeners, thank you for listening. Bye.